There we go.
Welcome to the City Council meeting of May 8th, 2017. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the chamber. And first, let us rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a special presentation from the mayor today. Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Chairperson, members of the council, thank you for allowing me once again to present the Mayor's Award of Excellence. Of course, this will be for the month of February, and it's being presented to a team from the City Clerk's office and the Finance Department. I'm sure you will recognize our City Clerk, Teresa Meyer, and Assistant City Clerk, Soni Fan. They're nominated in the categories of customer relations and productivity by their staff, Rhonda Bice and Monet McCullen. Due to some staff turnover, the two office assistant positions in the clerk's office were open for a period of time. This meant that Teresa and Soni had to take on those job duties in addition to their regular work in order for the city business to continue. They worked evenings and weekends to get the job done. Once the positions were filled, there was the additional work of training Soni to be the new assistant city clerk. When either of those positions are absent, the other takes on both jobs to keep the office running smoothly. Like many city offices, the city clerk's office is very busy and plans change quickly on a regular basis. The nominators say that Teresa and Soni always show positive attitudes and the willingness to do what is needed, that everything gets done in a timely manner. The nominators also say Teresa and Soni have helped them with the stress of learning the highly complex positions, which includes attending council meetings, processing executive orders, director's orders, permits, resolutions, ordinances, and so forth. The nominators wrote they gave encouraging words on our progress of learning the new positions. Although mistakes are never a good thing, they both have maintained patience and were always willing to help. They said Teresa and Soni were also welcoming to those who walk in the doors and need help, and their hard work has made the city clerk's office a well-oiled machine. So it's my pleasure to present Teresa Meyer and Soni Fan with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for February. Please join me in congratulating them on their hard work and commitment to the city. I think our new finance director wanted to say a couple words.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to have Teresa and Soni part of our department and to work with them. I told my staff earlier I'm blessed with one of the best staff that I've ever been a part of, and it's a great organization, and it's great that these two are recognized publicly to be a part of that. And as I was going through and reading the nomination that was submitted by Monet and Rhonda, I kept thinking back to adversity as an asset, and that kept popping back up in my head, because when you look at somebody, you look at this office, which is a small office, they lost 50% of their office, and they kept up processing the licenses, doing the minutes for the council, processing all the direct orders and the EOs that come through the office, and did it with a smile and the customer service that was needed. The traits that come to my mind that I see in them is hard work, resilience, cooperation, enthusiasm, and a team spirit. And I'm really pleased that they won this award. It's the second time I hear that Teresa has won the award, so I'm very pleased to work with such a professional staff, and I'm very honored to work with Teresa and Sony, and I'm very happy that they won this award, so thank you.
I'm sure they will not be shy about sharing a few words with you.
Show my.
You state your name and address, please.
I don't remember my name. The first time I received this was almost exactly 20 years ago, so this is quite a feat. First of all, I want to thank Rhonda and Monet for nominating us. Thank you, Mayor, for choosing us to receive this award. I really need to thank Janice Faulkner for giving me her shoulder to cry on during this period, because we really had a lot of stress. I'd like to thank my mom for bestowing me with her grit and determination, or as my family would say, stubbornness. For without them, I probably wouldn't be here. And I'd like to thank the council for your patience through all the transitions and upheaval that we've had. I love the work I do, but most importantly, I love the people I work with, not just within city clerk or finance, but throughout the city. They're really the best you could have. Thank you.
My family is here. My husband, Fong, my parents, Cam and Noi, and my children. And streaming live are my brother and sister who are out of state, so they know about 5 City TV. I wanted to thank everyone for just being here and also acknowledging the great work that our office does, as well as a great leader that we have. I've been with the city for about 10, 11 years now, and I've had really good mentors and good support from a lot of individuals, and Teresa is one of them. It was hard being short-staffed and learning the transition in the office and having really big shoes to fill. She has done a great job for the clerk's office and for the city in general. So being able to work with such great people and to be able to know such great individuals such as you as the council members, other department individuals, and meeting and creating friendships along with the professionalism that we have. So I just wanted to thank everyone that has supported me, especially Teresa, and all my other mentors that I've had, and the support that my family has given. It's been rough, but it's been good. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. We certainly rely on you for a lot of support. And as the mayor mentioned, apparently coming to council meetings is stressful. So thank you for helping to ease that stress among us. All right. We'll move into the regular meeting. I'll just mention that agendas are available outside the chamber door, and if anyone needs a parking pass, our award-winning clerk has them right here. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, followed by those who are opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Testifiers should clearly state their name and address. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker, and the timer will sound after 4 minutes as a reminder. After testifying, if you could please sign in on the pink sheet next to the microphone that's on either side of the podium, that would help us keep the meeting moving. After all public hearings, the council will then vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Mondays of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on today's agenda nor planned for a future agenda. Courtesy and decorum are expected of all who come before this body. No one may approach city staff without permission from the council, and please no applauding, booing, or other expression of support or opposition except through your testimony. All cell phones should be turned off and private conversations taken outside the chamber. And during the week, if you have questions about any particular agenda item, please feel free to contact any council member. Teresa, would you please call the first item?
Yes, our first item is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 13.
Okay, and we have an appointment. If Mr. Sorensen is here, if you'd like to come forward. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you could just state your name and address, and then
Robert J. Sorensen. I'm Omaha, Nebraska, 6709 Hillcrest Lane.
okay, welcome. And you're here because you're being appointed to the Fire Sprinkler and Chemical Examining Board. You want to
Yes,
tell us a
ma'am.
little bit about your interest in that?
I have been in the suppression business for 18 years, so it's a passion of my life. I do it every day, and it interests me to be able to take part. So,
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Yeah, Cindy.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today, Mr. Sorensen. So, you just stated that you have an Omaha address.
Yes, ma'am.
And so does your company do work here in Lincoln pretty regularly?
yes, ma'am, we do.
So it's not going to be a hardship for you to come and attend our meetings?
No, ma'am.
Do you know how often we're going to make you come?
4 times a year, I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to the items on our consent agenda? And Teresa, could you remind us which items those are?
Yep, these are items 1 through 13.
Okay. All right, seeing none. Please
All right.
take us.
We can vote on these items. Item 1 was introduced by Fellers.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Then items 2 and 10 were introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then are public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call items 15 and 16 together. They are the application of Discount City for a Class C liquor license at 5560 South 48th Street, Suite 6, and the related manager application of Angela Coffee.
Are those, I'm sorry, excuse me, those items 14 and 15?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Angela. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Just state your name and address.
Angela Coffey, 12205 West Bluff Road, Malcolm, Nebraska.
You want to just tell us a little bit about your application?
I just want to upgrade and sell growlers and crowlers, and I don't do very good wine business, so I want to be able to do wine tastings on a regular basis.
Any questions from the council? All right, thank you for coming down today. Would anyone else like to speak to these items? Okay, seeing none, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next are items 16 and 17. They are the application of Hacienda Real 2 for a Class I liquor license at 4811 Northwest 1st Street, Suites 101 and 102, as well as the related manager application of Aurora Curial. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
Sí, juro.
Thank you.
Welcome.
State your name and address.
My name is Aurora Curiel, and my address is 6601 South 32nd Street, Lincoln, Nebraska 68516.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down today. Is there anything you'd like to share with us about your application?
Bueno, solamente quiero nada más sobre nuestra solicitud es porque queremos abrir un segundo restaurante, Hacienda Real, en el lado de Highlands. Yeah.
The reason for the application is because we want to open a new restaurant in the Highlands area, Hacienda Real 2.
Es comida mexicana.
It's Mexican food.
Wonderful. Any questions from the council? Carl?
Yes, thank you for being here. So have been to your restaurant in South Point. That's a great restaurant. Will you do the same thing in the Highlands location?
Ella ha ido a tu restaurante aquí en South Point y dice que sí va a ser lo mismo en la siguiente ubicación.
Exactamente.
Exactly.
Any other
Bueno.
questions? Okay. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to these items? Right, seeing none, please call the next item, Teresa.
Next, I'll call items 18 through 21. They are all the manager application of Andrea Homestead for Holiday Inn Express and Suites Lincoln Airport at 1101 West Commerce Way, for Holiday Inn Express Suites Lincoln Southeast at 8801 Amber Hill Court, for Holiday Inn Lincoln Southwest at 2500 Tamarind Ridge Road, and for the Fairfield Inn and Suites at 1000 West Bond Street. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Andrea Homestead, 8015 North 28th Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68112.
Welcome. You want to just tell us about your applications?
We're just updating some of our applications. I'm the controller for all the properties, so we just decided to switch it over to my name rather than ownership.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you for making time to be here today.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to these items? All right, seeing none, please call the next.
All right, next is item 22, manager application of Jason Schmick for Schmick's Market at 2727 North 11th Street and 1340 West O Street. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. Can you just state your name and address for the record,
Yeah,
please?
Jason Schmick, 2220 South 60th Street here in Lincoln.
Okay. And you want to tell us a little bit about your application?
Fairly new to town. I've been here for about a year. I think the application was in my younger brother's name previously to that, so it's a family-owned business, and I'm here living in town now and managing both of these stores. So,
Any questions? Go.
Yes, I'm really glad that you opened both the stores. Refresh me on how long that has been.
we're in our third year right now for both of them.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down today. If you could just fill out that form before you go. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, please call the next.
All right, next is item 23. It's the manager application of Mary Bailey for all of the quick shops in town.
Hi.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Bailey. My address is 4633 Kirkwood Drive in Lincoln, 68516.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. We're having a change in leadership in our organization. We've gone from 2 districts, which normally you've seen 2 alcohol licenses within Lincoln. We're moving to 1, so I have all 14 stores instead of just 7. So,
Great. Carl.
Thank you for being here. So we do have the server seller training that your employees take. And so, but beyond that, how do you train your staff in all these different locations that you have?
we actually, part of it is creating expectations, but when we have associates come on board, they go through pretty rigorous training that's, we're affiliated with Kroger as our parent company, so we go through their sponsored training. And then we kind of take the approach that we need our associates to keep themselves safe, and we talk a lot about not selling restricted products to minors. Then we go on and we do all of the food permits and all the alcohol licensing from there. Once they're in the stores, then they get to be hounded, maybe for lack of a better word, about how we're going to maintain everybody's safety, including the public safety with respect to restricted products. And we talk about carding, we talk about making those decisions. And we talk about those every day, every week. That is a manager's conversation with our new associates and our existing associates. The other thing that we do as an organization is we partner with bars. So they come in and do every period, so there's 13 periods for us in a year. Every period, they come in and we get evaluated on our processes and whether our associates are following those processes to ensure that we are not going to sell restricted products to minors. So it's an ongoing, ever uphill battle.
Do the bars reciprocate and have you come into their establishments?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming down today.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next.
All right, next then is item 24, application of Lincoln Children's Zoo for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 1,500 feet by 400 feet at 1222 South 27th Street on June 2nd between 5:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. and June 17th between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. No oath.
No, okay.
Not on SDLs.
Oops, sorry about that. Hi, I'm John Chapo with Lincoln Children's Zoo, 2340 Stockwell is my residence. Here asking for the application for 2 special events at the zoo, which are both fundraising events for the zoo. Our annual garden party on June 2nd, and then Brews at the Zoo on June the 17th this year. Both adult-only events.
Will either of these events be a little different given all the construction, or you want to?
Matter of fact, the parking lot work, that's just why we moved the Brews at the Zoo event up. It's a smart question because usually that happens in July, and we anticipate some disturbance in July, so we're going to use the current parking lot. We felt an evening event with people like that, it's important to use the existing parking lot for any issues.
Most important question is, while these events are going on, will we still be able to see the animals?
To a limited degree, yes, you will. We'll bring some special animals out to meet our guests, especially at the garden party. But you can tour the zoo, but not act like an animal. Only animals can act like an animal. Okay.
Good advice.
Thank you for coming down
Thank you.
today. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? All right, seeing none, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next is item 25, application of Single Barrel for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 100 feet by 700 feet and 100 feet by 300 feet at Pershing Auditorium at 226 Centennial Mall South on June 16th between 5 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. and June 17th between 11 a.m. and 11:30 p.m.
Hi, I'm Heath McCumber with the Single Barrel, 122 North 11th Street, number 402, Lincoln, 68508.
Want to tell us a little bit about your events?
Basically, this is the Celebrate Lincoln event that used to be put on downtown a number of years ago in the streets of downtown. Got moved to the festival space the last couple of years, and the radio partners wanted to bring it back to the streets, and we're just helping with the bar parts of it.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the council? Carl, then John.
Yeah, if you could just explain exactly where it's going to be located.
Yep, it's on the intersecting streets of Centennial and N Street, so down by Pershing. Similar to the footprint of where Ribfest used to be, but not exactly. It's a little bit different.
A good place.
John?
I was going to follow up with that. So as far as motorists and others coming and going, what streets would be closed?
Centennial from north from N Street is going to be the hub, so it'll go, the one entrance will be towards the north, 1 block towards the north, and the other entrance will be 1 block to the south of that with, so that'd be an O and M. Is that right?
You're going all the way to O or just to N? N to P, or I'm sorry, N to M?
I don't know if you, do you want to?
Just for the benefit of
a map?
Motorists, yeah.
You can put it on the Elmo there.
Pardon me.
There you go.
So basically, we're not going to go further west of Centennial, basically. So it'll go east to the end of that block and north to the end of Centennial Mall block-ish, and then south as well to M Street.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming down today. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Seeing none, please call the next item.
All right, next is item 26, application of Zipline Brewing for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 70 feet by 72 feet at 2100 Magnum Circle, Suite 1 on June 24th between 1 p.m. and 10 p.m.
Hello, I'm Craig Dreyer here on behalf of Zipline Brewing Company. We're holding our what has become annual crawfish boil on June 24th at the brewery, and we just wanted to make an outside area for our patrons to get messy with crawfish. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I'm sorry, did you state your address?
Oh, sorry,
I didn't-
1524 Skyline Drive.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Seeing none, please call the next item.
All right, next then is item 27, application of Duffy's Tavern for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 65 feet by 55 feet at 1412 O Street on May 26th between 4 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Greetings. I'm Scott Hatfield from Duffy's Tavern, 1412 O Street.
And what brings you down to City
Thank
Council
you.
today?
We are having an outdoor show with a band called Red Storm Rising from my birthplace of Akron, Ohio. They'll be touring through, and they're going to play with two local bands, one called Freakabout and one called Laughing Falcon, and that is on Friday, May 26th, outside behind Duffy's.
Carl probably wants to know if you're going to keep him up.
Carl and I talked about it. I think we're going to try to end the music a little bit earlier for Carl. Well, end the actual band a little earlier, and then we'll have a DJ carry it through a little further into the evening. But I don't think we'll keep him up too late.
Is the 2 a.m. time just a close down time? Or
2
will
a.m.
they...
is when we'll close down. I would assume the DJ will play sometime a little bit after 1, but it'll, probably 1:30 or something like that, and then we'll wrap everything up around then.
All right. Any other questions from the council?
That's when you can go home, Carl.
I would assume Carl will be there until sometime close to 2 a.m.
We already booked a table.
Yep.
All right.
Any questions?
I think we're good.
If I might add, I would like to thank Councilman Fellers for his service. Probably the last time I'll be before you, and I do appreciate it. And I also think you're very deserving of the Mayor's Excellence Award. Thanks for all your help. Teresa gets me to these meetings, otherwise I would not know. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right.
Madam Chair, seeing no one come forward, it's my honor, because John Camp gave it to me, to move items 14 through 27, while I still have the power to do that.
Second.
He just wanted me to sign all these, that's what he did.
Moved by Trenton, seconded by Roy. Any discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are public hearing resolutions. Item 28, comp plan conformance 17006, approving an amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the city center redevelopment project for the demolition of the existing Journal Star Printing Company facility and the construction of an approximate 11-story mixed-use building on property generally located at 926 P Street.
Members of the City Council, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, the applicant in this case. We need to make the Lincoln City redevelopment plan conform with our hoped-for project at 9th and P, the city center project. It doesn't have to be as specifically designated as we do in a redevelopment agreement, but it needs to be generally described. And so the council has the decision at this point as to whether or not you find it in compliance with the downtown master plan and the long-term comprehensive plan for the city. This project will be the largest, single, most expensive built building in not only downtown Lincoln, but I think in the city of Lincoln at $90+ million. It represents an 11-story layer cake. Below ground are 100 parking stalls. First floor is retail. That's 35,000 square feet, conforming with the downtown design standards for transparency, glass, and the kind of thing that makes the walkable experience that we're hoping for on P Street come alive on this block. Above that, on the second floor, are 140 parking stalls to serve the tenants in the building. And then there are 89,000 square feet of Class A commercial office space located on the third and fourth floors. And then finally, floors 5 through 11, a total of 7 floors, will consist of approximately 245 market rate residential units. The private developer steps forward to pay for the $78.5 million of private investment. That generates, to the best of our ability to guess, about $13.5 million in TIF funds. There are a variety of expenses that bear on the developer that could be used for the TIF, and that's part of our redevelopment agreement negotiations going on at this time, but they would include and at least consider site acquisition, site preparation and grading, demolition, environmental remediation, streetscape, street improvements, public area enhancements, public parking, energy efficiency, facade enhancements, and other benefits. If you want to see the project area, this is that area. This is 9th Street. Here's P Street and our P Street corridor. This is consistent with our P Street design plan, which, by the way, has engendered with this 5 projects along P Street, developing P Street significantly in the last couple of years. There is an existing bank building. It's right here. That stays. There is an existing garage. That stays.
Dave, could you move the microphone closer to you while you speak?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll do this. This is the garage that stays, the small bank that stays. This is the new building, 11 floors in height, as I said. There'll be an in and out here, probably for a drive-through, and that's the location. It includes some of the right-of-way in the surrounding areas, because once you get below ground to find out what's there for sewers and utilities, you don't know how far the problems extend and how long it would take or what needs to be done. So we include some right-of-way. The Planning Commission heard this case, and they ruled 8-0 and spoke quite approvingly. The Journal-Star will be moving out of the location. The old building will be demolished and replaced by this structure. And the developer is present and able to answer questions, as am I, if I can be helpful.
Any questions for Dave? Carl.
Yes. Mr. Landis, has there been any discussion about a skywalk over 9th Street? Is there any way to...
Not over 9th Street.
Okay.
There is a skywalk talk, and it is to connect the building, and let me just sort of pen that in, with the garage. Yeah. No, there hasn't been talk about a skywalk over 9th Street or over 10th Street. There are concerns about the effect of 9th and 10th Street on the walkability of P Street. Both 9th and 10th contain a rather good deal of fast-moving traffic. Right. It's broad and wide. That is an inhibitor for pedestrian traffic. But there are some things that you can do. You can move 2 lanes of turning to 1 lane of turning. You can do things like a bump out of some sort to mask what is perhaps parallel parking, but come out to the point where the parallel parking begins, and adjustments like that. So there is a very significant attention to the question of, and the concern that is shared by the developer and the city for pedestrian traffic. It does not include a skywalk.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Okay, I've got one. So there's so many ways. This is textbook conformance with the comp plan, but what I wanted to ask about is parking. We've seen a couple of projects lately come before council where the developer intends to utilize parking in an existing garage, and in this case, the redeveloper envisions being able to use up to 340 parking stalls. What does that do to the rest of the people in the city who intend to use those garages, which I thought were near capacity, if not at capacity? How does that work? What's the impact?
The capacity changes over time by attrition. We're talking about a construction time of perhaps 20 months, and we don't have a redevelopment agreement. So we have a space of about a couple of years, almost a couple of years, in which existing users would gradually and naturally attrit. One of the users or body of users here are university students. They choose to be here rather than on the campus. So we're providing a rather healthy amount of university parking for university students. Now, university students come in for 9 months, not a full year, because they usually go home in the summer, and when they do, their contract lapses. So in the natural course of several of our garages where we've had something like this, we've used that natural attrition. Our best guess by the parking services is that the natural attrition should make what is necessary for the developer available at this location.
Is there a wait list at that garage currently?
There's a wait list during the school year at practically every garage in Lincoln. This is one of the least used garages. I think because of the 9th and 10th Street phenomenon, among others. But the fleet of foot students apparently don't mind dashing across 10th Street to get to the campus.
Would you say, though, generally speaking, that this project combined with the others, like the Kindler Hotel, that we're starting to put more pressure on the existing garages and that will help accelerate?
There's a good deal of pressure on the existing garages. And there's a tension between development and the availability of garages. And it is the question that we get a great deal when developers come to town. So we do have a history of trying to figure out how to make development and parking work simultaneously. However, it is critical that we find and locate and purchase ground for a downtown garage. We've gotten an appraisal back for an area in center in Lincoln. And by the way, the more it's in the center part of the downtown, the less it's used by students, who I think the university should bear responsibility for, and state employees, who I think the state should bear responsibility for. So it does make a difference where you locate a garage, and we're aiming for one in the core of the downtown. If you were to divide the downtown into quadrants, it would be in the southeast quadrant. But as soon as the final work on the appraisal is done, we'll call together the landowners in the area, and we'll see if we can't build a garage that has a first floor uses, that uses the existing parties that are located there now. Ultimately, they will be displaced for a period of time, but that would give us a chance to do that. That is about as high a priority for my department at the moment, and the reason is we are at essentially capacity for the system, and this is one of those pieces that is very important to development. I have to say that I've been gratified with this project and with the 9th and O projects that a portion of their parking is done by the developer. That's been very helpful, and we'd like to encourage that more and more if at all possible.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move that back. Madam Chair, members of the council, my name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln. Appearing before you today on behalf of Newman Development. Newman Development is a developer in upstate New York, located in Binghamton, New York. And you may ask, how does a developer in Binghamton, New York get to Lincoln? Lee Enterprises, the holding company for Journal Star Printing Company, has been trying to market some of their downtown holdings because of the high market value, and this is one that really caught the interest of Newman Development, primarily because of its proximity to downtown Lincoln, its proximity to West Haymarket, and the proximity to the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. The question before you is really pretty simple, whether or not the amendment to the redevelopment plan that's on your agenda is consistent with the general plan of development. I thought I ought to talk a little bit about the project first. As I mentioned, Newman Development has a contract to purchase this property. I think this property, the block, is very important to the city of Lincoln for numerous reasons. First of all, it's really the first block to be seen when incoming traffic comes down off of I-180 into downtown Lincoln. I think that will be a prominent design feature from the architects. It's certainly part of the P Street retail corridor that has been the emphasis of the downtown master plan. And it also will provide the linkage to the Haymarket and the West Haymarket from the historic downtown, and we have an opportunity to help provide that linkage with this project. The architects that have been selected for this property are WDG Architecture from Washington, D.C. They're a prominent national architect specializing in mixed-use development, and I think this project certainly qualifies as a mixed-use project. The only qualification I would add to the description provided by Director Landis is that it is likely now that the project is 10 floors rather than 11 floors. There's some reasons for that, but it still would be a retail first floor, parking on the second level, office on the third and fourth, and then 6 levels of residential comprised of 232 dwelling units with a prominent mixture of studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. As mentioned, the parking, certainly that's important for this property. The downtown or the lower level basement area of the existing facility will be retained as parking for the retail area, and then there will be another parking level at level 2. The other thing that I would add is that the rooftop area will have amenities for both the residential uses and the office uses that will have prominent views of both the campus and the West Haymarket, and will be a nice amenity for the residents. What I have in the overhead is not really what the design is. I show this. This was an early architectural rendering showing how the massing may fit on this block. We had a preliminary look at the design last week, and I'm very excited to bring that forward to show you what the architect's vision is for this block. I think they've really done a very nice job of trying to marry all of the different aspects and the importance of this block for this project. We're currently going through the design process, and we anticipate that the project will be in front of the Urban Design Committee on June 6th, which is the first meeting in June. And then we anticipate having a redevelopment agreement to you, hopefully right after the 4th of July, be my thought, if not sooner. The intent would be to start demolition next fall sometime, and with vertical construction probably in the spring of 2018. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I would ask for your support for the project, and if there's anything I can add to it, please let me know.
Any questions for Tom? John?
Could you address a little bit more the residential component?
Yeah, the residential component will start at level 5, and they anticipate 232 dwelling units. WDG Architecture, one of their specialties is really urban residential design, and that's one reason that the building actually may shrink from 11 floors down to 10 floors with a loss just of a few units, but keep it down to 10 floors. One of the questions that we had, the downtown B4 business district that this site is located in, the northwest corner of the block is subject to a 150-foot height limitation. The rest of the block is not. It's just that northwest corner because of the impact of the airport environs area. So rather than ask for any waiver, the building is going to comply with 150 feet. It is market rate housing. It's fairly high-end housing. It's really designed for the urban downtown professional that's looking for the urban lifestyle in downtown Lincoln. We don't have a similar project in Lincoln with a large-scale market rate housing component like this. And our client has engaged a national prominent housing consultant that has done an analysis of the housing market in the city of Lincoln, and my client's very excited about the opportunity in Lincoln for this project.
When you say market rate, is it for sale, for rent?
Rental.
Rental.
We're not going to condo it. It's pure rental. Yeah.
And you have a mix of
Mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and a few 2-bedrooms. No 3-bedrooms. They're going to be smaller units, which I think is what the market's really looking for, requesting.
Square footage, is there a range in size?
That's probably deeper in the weeds than I know right now, but I would guess it would be in the 600 to 700 square foot on the larger units, but.
On the larger or smaller?
Probably on the smaller. Yeah, probably on the smaller. Not going to be large units, though.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next is item 29, approving an interlocal cooperation agreement between the city and the Lower Platte South NRD for cooperative planning and future ownership of trails in urbanizing areas.
Good afternoon. My name is Len Johnson. I'm the Director of the Parks and Recreation Department here in Lincoln. This is an agreement with the Lower Platte South NRD to address transitioning of the ownership, management, and upgrading of trails in areas as we see the edges of the city develop, primarily really at the eastern edge. The case in point that we're looking at is really the Mopac Trail as it is located east of 84th Street. The city ownership of that area ends just east of 84th Street, and then it transitions into NRD ownership. This area has already come in for development. There is a pending development application in this area, and one of the things that we've learned through this process is that ideally it makes sense for the city to be in the leadership position of negotiating with the developer in the future alignment of the trail with an emphasis on safety. One of the things we're particularly interested in is, I think as you know today, that the Mopac Trail crosses A Street at an angle. Ideally, for safety reasons in the future, it needs to cross at a 90-degree angle. And so there's some negotiation that needs to happen there. As Stevens Creek continues to build out, we'll continue to have this situation where we have trail that has been previously rural trail and that we'll want to transition to being urban trail in the future. The agreement allows for, as these developments start to come forward, the city can request from the Lower Platte South NRD to transfer ownership to the city, and then at that point, the city would be responsible for maintenance and would also be responsible for negotiating any adjustments to the alignment. And then from a longer-term perspective, the city would be responsible for putting together the funding strategy for upgrading the trail from limestone surface to concrete surface as the rest of the system is. The rest of the urban system is. This is a 10-year agreement. It has the opportunity to extend it for an additional 5-year period. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I'd like to note that Paul Zillig with the Lower Platte South NRD is here this afternoon, can speak to Lower Platte South NRD's board action on this, and I know that David Carey from the Planning Department is here this afternoon, and I think wants to speak and answer any questions you might have about kind of how this engages the Planning Department's review of development applications. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Jane and Cindy?
Just a couple of questions. What does the road work look like, or proposed roads that might intersect that trail? I know that's always a little bit problematic and challenging.
I may need David Carey to come up and speak directly about that. There will be probably at least one roadway crossing of that. And one of the opportunities or one of the advantages of getting this into city ownership is then we're negotiating very directly with the developer in terms of getting that alignment in a good placement where it's safe. And ideally, we'd like to minimize the number of roadway crossings as well.
David Carey with the City County Planning Department. So what we've been doing with the reviews of the development proposals that have come in have been to both try to limit the number of crossings, and we've done that, of the trail itself, but then also through the discussion such as the transfer of the ownership, basically talk about what would be the more ideal situation of the crossings in the future when the opportunity arises for further development going to the east there. So it's all, the way that the trail is aligned is in discussion right now, but the idea is to basically limit the amount of crossings so that we only have a few of those, so the conflicts are not too great. But there will be at least one crossing of the trail.
So just one?
No, not just one in total, but there is one for the development review that has come through already, and we're working on what will happen for the rest of the development as it happens going to the east.
So is it something that we would ask the developer to maybe mitigate and have that crossing go under? Something like that? Have we asked developers to take on that cost if they want that crossing?
We have not asked them to do an underpass, no.
Mm-hmm. So it's probably something that we could discuss.
We could discuss that. I think that our discussions at this point have been to the point of saying that we feel like because they're local streets that it would not be that great of a detriment to the trail operation out there. There wouldn't be so much traffic that it would be that detrimental. I can speak to that as the trail potentially might get realigned to come down to when it intersects with A Street, that we are working on basically a design that will allow it to come down and then follow A Street, so we have a less awkward crossing, which is at an angle right now. So we are working on all those types of aspects of this.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, oh, sorry, Cindy, then Carl.
Thank you. Okay, so this goes beyond just that one trail. This is a policy change, correct?
It's actually kind of a continuation of an existing policy. Back in 1982, there was an interlocal agreement established between the city and the NRD for the Salt Creek Levee Trail system. And in that instance, the NRD develops the trail. After it's been developed, they turn it over to the city for management. So this is essentially new on the edge of the city, but it's a continuation of existing policy framework that exists for trails within the city system along the Salt Creek Levee.
Would there be a cost involved in transferring ownership to the city?
My understanding that there will not be a cost, that the land will be transferred to the city at no cost.
And then I understood you to say that when this happens, then there would be, it would be the city's responsibility, and we would be looking at how do we bring it from limestone up to what the rest of our trails consist of. And we currently have some limestone still within on city trails, correct?
We do. The Murdoch Trail is still limestone, and we've been working on a couple of different strategies to get that upgraded to concrete.
And so what is the cost of, well, what is the distance that still is limestone, and what's the cost of upgrading that?
In terms of the Murdoch Trail?
Yes,
Or-
correct.
Can I get back to you on that? We've got that information. We recently submitted a grant application to the federal government for land and water conservation funding to get that. We've not yet heard back on that, but I can certainly provide that information about the length that would be included in the grant application and what the cost estimate was.
Okay, and primarily the reason I asked is there's nothing on the fact sheet that indicates any kind of cost projections to the city for this particular resolution. Do you have an estimate?
Yeah, I thought that question might come up. As we the concrete urban trail system costs about $1,000 a mile to maintain. A majority of that is mowing and snow removal. These limestone trails are actually less costly to maintain because we don't remove snow from them. So on average, I think they run in the $400 to $600 a year range in terms of maintenance. So here we're looking at adding, if I remember right, this is something less than a mile. So we might be adding less than initially it'd probably be less than $400 or $500 a year for maintenance. As this is built out, it's going to then be something less than $1,000 a year for maintenance. In terms of the process of upgrading it from limestone to concrete, there's a number of grant funding sources. We'd also probably partner with the Great Plains Trails Network in terms of trying to secure private funding to assist with that.
So, but this goes beyond this one trail.
It does, from a practical standpoint, it's really only the MOPAC. The agreement is written that it would apply to essentially any rural trail, but as a practical standpoint, this is really the only trail that's really within an urbanizing area at this point.
And then would any future trails, would that come before this body, or would it automatically come in as a result of this?
I think this agreement is written that this would be handled at an administrative level. We would have the opportunity to approach the Lower Platte South about transferring ownership to the city. This is a 10-year agreement, so we'll have the opportunity to monitor how this is going over time.
Thank you.
John.
Yes, Mr.
Wait,
Johnson.
sorry,
I'm
Carl was next, and then John. Okay.
All right, thanks. This question, not sure if Paul needs to get it or who, but I'm just curious about, this is the trail that ultimately would go to Omaha, right?
That's correct,
and
yes.
Just was curious on the update of how that connection to get us to Omaha is going.
Probably is a question for Paul, because I think he can update on the status of that.
Good afternoon. Paul Zillig, General Manager with Lower Platte South NRD. The MOPAC is part of the trail connection between Omaha and Lincoln. We've been in the process of working with Cass County, trying to come up with a connector from essentially Elmwood up to the Lead Platte River Bridge that's by South Bend. And we're looking at a combination of Department of Roads right-of-way and county road right-of-way, and those discussions are still ongoing anyway. We don't have a route at this point anyway.
Okay, thank you.
John.
Thank you. Yes, this may be for, excuse me. Sorry about that. Going on earlier, you talked about the grant application that you're making with, from the federal government. What's the amount of the grant application for?
If I remember right, John, I think it's $800,000, but I will get back to the city council on that. That was submitted not quite a year ago at this point, and we've been waiting to hear back. This is typically when we compete for these land and water conservation funds. It's at the state level. This was a grant that was available at the national level, and we thought that we would hear earlier this year, and we've not gotten a report back as to the status of that yet, but I will provide specifics about that grant in terms of the length of it and what the cost estimate was.
So, but I think I heard you say when Ms. Lamb was asking you questions that this grant would cover the cost?
It covers the cost for upgrading the Murdoch Trail in northeast Lincoln that is currently limestone surface to concrete surface.
So that would really answer what Ms. Lamb said on the cost.
It wouldn't address this section, though, because this is the Mopac Trail. So this would be, we'd have to look for a funding strategy to address the Mopac Trail in the future.
Okay. And then you were talking about mowing and plowing, other maintenance of the trails. How many times a year would they be mowed? In the summer
Typically, trail corridors are typically mowed on the same cycle as our parks are. So we're typically mowing about every 14 days. So we're mowing, depends on the year, but typically 23 or 24 times a year. And then obviously snow removal. Our standard is that if we get an inch of snow or more, that's when we're out removing snow from trails. And obviously from year to year that varies. We did not move much snow this year, as a matter of fact.
No. So if you're mowing, for example, 23 or 4 times a season, and I believe I heard you say that a mile is roughly $600 a year in cost?
For these limestone trails, yeah, that's about the number.
So what's the concrete, or the concrete was $1,000?
Is about $1,000. When we've looked at the overall trail system, we track labor by, essentially by location. And when we've looked at the overall trail system, when we've divided the cost by number of miles, it's about what we come up with is about $800 to $1,000 a year for maintenance.
So you're saying you can, for a mile, if you do it, say, 24 times a year and plow it once or twice, that it's only $40 a time to do that on a mile?
Typically we're only mowing, depends on the trail and the width of the corridor, but a lot of trails we're only mowing one swath on either side. So it mows very quickly, it's large equipment. A lot of these trails are connecting park areas, so instead of loading the mowing equipment upon trailers and then hauling it to the next site, we're driving along the trail corridor that connects to the other parks. The mower's down and it's mowing at the same time.
I wish you'd check that, because I can't believe $40 for someone to drive 2 miles on a mower. Your labor costs alone's got to be $100 to $200.
We'll check that. I know that that's a piece of information that we monitor every budget preparation cycle.
Okay. And then, okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Lynn? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item?
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Brad Marshall with Olson Associates. I am here on behalf of owners along the Mopac Trail. I believe we're referenced as the pending application to the Planning Department. We have been, thank you very much. So actually, I represent the owners that are from 98th Street to approximately 91st Street here. There are several property owners on both sides of A Street that we are considering application to come forward to the Planning Department for annexation. We have been working with the portion of property that has been referenced, has been already approved and annexed and zoned. I'm here on behalf we've already started some of the discussions with the city of how to work with these trails that intercede properties, especially dividing properties that are under common ownership. It may be easier with one owner being on one side of a trail and another being on another where the trail is actually divisive. As the city grows to the east in general, with the sewer being brought to the east side of Lincoln, we'll see more pending developments pop up along the way in the near future. This development will be urbanized. The developers believe that it should have more of an urban feel to it. And this agreement, this interlocal agreement, will give the developers a little bit more flexibility to work with the planning department to make it feel like a more urban setting. And when I say it gives us a little bit more flexibility, that does absolutely mean that we are able to take in safety considerations along the way, utility networks and so forth. During our preliminary investigations of this with planning department, we did look at how many crossings of the trail currently have. One, for instance, and this won't be the case for everyone, but 94th Street is and probably will someday be a primary access into Hillcrest Country Club. There is a crossing of A Street before 98th Street as well. This agreement will allow us to possibly locate those in more urban setting where those trail crossings can be located at intersections in more appropriate manners, and hopefully decrease the number of crossings that we will work on with the layouts with planning department. If you have any other questions, that's all I had.
Jane.
So, since you represent several of the owners, are they looking at assisting with the relocation of some of those trails in terms of, I guess, giving easements for a newly rerouted trail?
Yes, as I understand it, this will be a process through the annexation agreement that will work through planning department to finalize the conditions. You know, if we were to relocate those trails, you know, there will be a possibility of land swaps and consideration of financial consideration for those trails. Those trail placements could be on lands that are then gifted to the city, or financial contributions can be made for converting those from an aggregate from a limestone to a concrete surfacing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item?
Yeah, this is Paul Zullig again, Lower Platte South NRD General Manager, 7931 Stockwell Street here in Lincoln. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the agreement. The NRD board has approved the agreement. You know, late last year, we started to get into the middle of a lot of the discussions with landowners, developers, city departments, and we started realizing that from the NRD standpoint, we have 26 miles of the Mopac Trail from Lincoln to Wabash, and it's a rural setting, a little different situation. And as we started getting in the middle of the discussions on utilities, road crossings, and those kind of changes, the board agreed that this is probably something that's best with the city as far as the city negotiating with the landowners, developers, and amongst the different city departments on what their needs might be. So the board did approve it. They could see changes are coming. It's going to be a lot different out there, and they think that for the best of the trails and the community that this agreement should be approved. So with that, if there's any questions.
Questions? So if for some reason we didn't approve this, what position would that put the NRD in as land is annexed into the city with trails that run through it?
Well, we would be at the table. There would be a lot of we'd continue to manage our trail, the Mopac Trail, like it is now. And as the discussions with the adjoining property owners come into play, at some point, the NRD board would need to take actions on whether they would grant easements for utility crossings, street crossings, all those type of matters. So we would be involved in that whole process, which if the agreement isn't approved, then that's where we'll be. But I think it's best with the city, but that's for you to decide now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next is item 30, approving a conservation easement agreement by and among the City of Lincoln, the Lower Platte South NRD, the Bruce J. Sievers Family Trust, and the Lola H. Sievers Family Trust to preserve the natural resources on the easement area described as Lot 54 IT, located in the southeast quarter of Section 23, Township 9 North, Range 6 East.
Good afternoon, Ben Higgins. I'm with Public Works Watershed Management Division. The executor for this, the Sievers Families Trust, came to us late last fall and said asked us if we were interested in this property here, and this is this one outlined in red right there. As you can see, it's completely in the floodplain. There's parks both on the west side and the south and the north side, and so we thought it'd be a good one to get a conservation easement on it. We went and talked to the NRD. They agreed that they would help with that. We have funding for that. The NRD has funding for that. It's 36 acres, $126,700 it was appraised for the conservation easement, and so we'd like to have this as a conservation easement to preserve the floodplain storage for it, the natural drainage ways, and just other natural functions of it. It's been approved by Planning Commission, approved by the NRD Board, and signed off by the property owner. So, if any questions?
John?
Kind of a touchy question.
Okay.
With Wilderness Park and all, and
Mm-hmm.
the concerns that citizens have for that and the property aspect, and yet the long-term talks of will it ever be overpassed by some vehicular road? What would this do to that, if anything? And I know that that's probably very slim chance of ever happening, but I guess, are we in any way changing that? Or it looks like the north and south lines are with the section line streets.
Yeah, to be honest, I've never heard that brought forward by anybody. I mean, I suppose it's always a possibility. I mean, the South Beltway is much further south than that, and I mean, crossing the Salt Creek, I mean, we're talking millions to cross it, so there is a stipulation there with the conservation easement that, you can work with Public Works and Utilities to do road crossings and utilities on that, so it could be done with the approval of the Public Works Director, if it came to that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item?
Paul Zollig again with Lower Platte South NRD. I do appreciate the scheduling back-to-back for my items. That's wonderful. The NRD has approved this conservation easement, and we would recommend support of it. The conservation easement law does not allow a conservation easement to stop a public works type of project, so that's not allowed, or else there'd be a lot of landowners that would be giving conservation easements just for that purpose. So anyway, we support approval of it.
And it looks like from the fact sheet that the NRD would be contributing 50% of the cost of the easement, which I think Ben said was about $126,000. Is that correct?
62.5, I believe, something like that is our 50% share.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next we'll go on to our public hearing ordinance's second reading. Item 31 is amending Chapter 5.04 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to alcoholic liquor to allow the city clerk to administratively approve certain outdoor special designated licenses and to amend and/or remove various sections to clean the code up.
Hello, Tanya Peters, Assistant City Attorney. I guess I'm here on behalf of ILC, the City Clerk's Office, and any other city department that's affected. Basically, the city clerk asked if there was a possibility that she would be able or delegated the authority from City Council to approve outdoor events. As you well know, you are getting more and more outdoor events that are coming before you. And currently, the city clerk has only been delegated authority to approve events, SDL events, indoors. So what we did is we worked with ILC, talked about it over an extended period of time. We were adjusting some of our changes, the fit changes from the Liquor Commission and their application process, and to make sure that our process would still work. And so this is the draft that we came up with today, and I'd be happy just to go through each section and kind of talk about them. There's also a little bit of cleanup language in there. I do also want to talk about one section. I think that I would like to offer you some additional language just to clarify what authority that you are giving the city clerk. That's okay with all of you? If you look at 5.04.020, this is a little bit more than catering, and it's a little bit more than just giving the city clerk some authority. We're adding the word catering because what we're seeing is some applications or applicants are using their catering contract or their catering liquor license in order to cater for themselves, thus avoiding some application fees. And so this is a little bit of a cleanup to kind of close that door. It would have a cost effect on some of your applicants who have been bypassing the application fee and the occupation taxes. Normally, if they're using their catering contract, they would pay, or catering liquor license, they would be paying 0 in occupation fees or permit fees. If they are catering for themselves or having their own event, now they would pay the $80 in the occupation fee. So that is a little bit different too. Also in there, we're making some clarifications just to match the state changes from last year in the definition of club. Before, a club that didn't have a kitchen didn't have to get a liquor license, and that was a change that was made last year to deal with some changes that they were seeing across the state. Amending entertainment district just to broaden the type of liquor licenses that are in there. Again, that mirrors the state statute, in the same with the changes to the manufacturer. So the most significant change is to adding the definition of caterer. In 5.04.035, we are just removing some dates that are no longer needed in here because we're well past 2013. In 5.04.050, a few years ago, we found out that city staff were not posting the new liquor license locations, and so in a way to avoid a very bad ordinance draft, we came up with a solution in which the city clerk would post notification on her website, and the applicant would be given a notice just to post on their door. It didn't make sense to have the police department drive to the location and stick a notice on the door. And so we've been doing that, so this just matches the ordinance with current practice. 5.04.064 would be clarifies that our game day limitation is only applying to outdoor areas. Historically, the city clerk's office has been approving SDLs for indoor locations, for example, on UNL campus at some of their social halls and some other halls that we have downtown where an SDL is needed in order to have a wedding or other events. This would just clarify that the only limitation that the city clerk would have on game days is to the outdoor areas. We would also, it was limiting, for some reason, limiting to certain types of liquor licenses. I think over time, new liquor licenses have been added, and this section just hasn't stayed up with those different variations. So we made that clarification also, that it would be any liquor license. Any questions on that section? 5.04.066 is where you're going to see probably the most significant change. This allows the city clerk to approve and administratively any outdoor location except those on government property. Now, this is a section that I think that looking at it now, and this came up in a conversation that I was having in the back, that it probably would be good to, unless council wants to give up their authority and delegate it to the city clerk, just to clarify that this does not include SDLs that are occurring on government property. So for example, inside this building out on a city street, there's a statutory requirement that would require city council approval. You could read this to say that you're delegating your authority to the city clerk, and that is not my understanding of what the ILC had intended. So I could make a pretty simple amendment to fix that if council would like that. I think it's just a little bit cleaner. And otherwise, I tried to build in so that if the event was significantly different for that outdoor area, so say city council approved an event, we'll just use UNL campus as an example, just because I brought that up before. And then a different type of event came up there on that property that would have a different impact on the surrounding property, that would need to come back to city council for approval. Or if there was any opposition, known opposition to that SDL, it would have to come back to city council. The reason I built that in there is because I had a concern that an event would occur, you would get the complaints, but it would already be approved and we wouldn't be able to take a step back. And so if there's any kind of notice from the city clerk on those differences, she needs to send it to city council for approval. 5.04.068, this is just a cleanup. Before, the city clerk would have to run an ad basically giving a deadline for a series of events. In the council in the past used to want all football game events to come to city council at once instead of coming in individual or in small groups and then seeing the applicant again. City council over time has not been as opposed to having it that way. So this just gives them two options. If they know what they're planning for the whole year, they can make a joint, just a one lump application, I should say, for the football season. They can just make one application, come to council one time, and you can approve them all. Or they can come as they know about these events, come before council. So we just set a fixed date of August 1st to be the deadline in order to give council enough time to approve the applications. 5.04.124 and 125 and 130 are just removing those unnecessary dates or expired provisions. And then 5.04.175 is a question that I received from an outside attorney as to what the definition of regular public service agency was. We don't currently, to my knowledge, have any liquor establishments that are delivering liquor to residential properties or whatever, but that is a thing that is occurring, or a service that's occurring in the United States. We may see an application for this. It is allowed under state statute. And so I was researching and I went back to the original regulations in like 1910 or whatever the first ones were. I cannot find a definition for regular public service agency, so we're just striking it unless we want to create a definition. So those are the changes and the effects of the changes. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Cindy.
Thanks for being here today. So most of these, obviously, we see over and over again, and I understand that, and I do think that that's an awful lot of work. At the same time, I'm reminded of the request for an SDL that would have required closing over at the rail yard prior to a football game. And so are we delegating responsibility for approval or denial of that type of an SDL also by passing this?
That was not the intent of that ILC, and it really isn't how it's drafted, but it's not real clear that that's not something that can occur. Statutorily, it says that the local governing body has to approve it, but by not addressing that you're not delegating your authority, it just gets a little bit wishy-washy for staff. So I think it would just be clearer if I bring back some language that just says if it's occurring on government property, city-owned government property, it needs to come to council.
So that would cover that for that roadway in front of that? Okay.
Yes.
Because I received thanks from law enforcement for this body not passing that after they saw the Oregon game. So
you either love events on city streets or you don't. And so it's probably one of those things we'll let city council deal with versus having that on the shoulder of the city clerk. So, and that was not the intent. But when I was sitting back there going, it'd probably be better just to clarify that.
So we can expect some type of amending language by
Yeah,
next week?
I was just thinking if you go to page, I think it was 10, that I would add some language that would say, I'm thinking maybe on C, if the location requires a event permit under the special event ordinance, basically the city clerk wouldn't have authority to approve it, or something along those lines. I'll play with it and get you something this week for you to review. So, my apologies on that one.
Thank you.
John.
On that latter comment, could you say including public rights-of-way or public streets or
I
something?
could just strictly say property owned by the city of Lincoln, and then that way you would get them all too, if that would.
So that'd do things like Zoo Fest and all, like we talk about on the streets?
Anything on the city streets, anything, we have kind of this void of property sometimes where it's not a street, it's not a sidewalk, it's just a piece of property that's owned by the city. And those have always came to city council. There's always politics involved in those on whether or not you think that they should be used for liquor sales or not. And so those have always been something that the city council has dealt with and probably should continue to deal with those issues. So.
Well, there'd be potential city liability too in those regards.
Definitely. Those are usually issues that I try to stop, but not always complete success.
Our clerk is nodding her head forcefully.
I
She
don't
wants
have that on
those
my
coming back to
shoulders.
us.
Well, I just think,
And I
as
have the
people
discretion.
transition to, it's good just to have some clear guidance to the new staff when they're reviewing it. And that is something I should have clarified more in there, so.
And if I'm uncomfortable with something, I can always bring it forward to council.
Yes, that's true too.
Second question I'd have, explain where you have an unlicensed property. Say the zoo, the children's zoo comes and wants to have this June 2nd event, so it's unlicensed, but it's having a licensee come and serve. What's involved there? What are the restrictions under these proposed changes?
Well, the zoo would be considered a government property. If you didn't want to have the zoo come each time, you could have an exemption or if unless lease to a business or lease. Because the Child Advocacy Center is another location where we have a lease. It's city property, but it's leased for a long period of time, and they may want to have an event. So if you give me some direction on whether or not you want to see those type of events come forward, I can draft the language accordingly too.
And what type of costs would that add under this legislation? Because you talked about an $80 fee and
They would
occupation
still pay
taxes.
all the normal fees. Coming to council doesn't change that. It just saves them a trip to council to explain the event. But council sometimes likes to recognize those events or to question whether or not those events should be occurring on government property.
Are there any new fees that this is causing on the
Not-
industry?
I'm sorry, not for those type of businesses, no, because they're still paying the occupation tax fee. But, or I suppose if they're having a caterer, they're not paying any fee. They're just using catering license. But let's say we have Bar A, ABC, and Bar ABC does catering for the zoo, but they also do events for themselves. In the past, they've been using their catering license to do an event for themselves, and technically they should be paying the occupation fee because they're not doing a catering for another business. And that would treat them more like the other businesses when they want to do an event for themselves. It's just been a loophole that we had talked about trying to close because those applications are a burden on the city clerk staff. It does recoup a little bit of that cost in those review and the police department, building and safety, and across the board on those.
What would the occupation tax be in addition to that $80?
That's it. It's just $80.
Oh, so that's just it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
that's.
there's no more?
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Any other questions?
Maybe Teresa? Okay. You want to talk to us a little bit about the burden on you and your office and in terms of SDLs and how this might help streamline?
Well,
things
if
for you?
memory serves, this originally came about at an ILC meeting about all of the SDLs on the council's agenda and how we might be able to streamline the process. And so it was suggested that maybe we do a code revision to allow the clerk to administratively approve some of those routine, no changes for outdoor, special designated license events.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for your work. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Seeing none, Teresa, take us to the next item.
All right, I'll call items 32 through 34 together. They are amending pay schedules for employee groups whose classifications are assigned to the pay range, which is prefixed by the letter M, by changing the title and pay range of Class 1497 from Microcomputer Support Supervisor in pay range M2 to Technology Support Supervisor 1 in pay range M01. And which is prefixed by the letter C, by changing the titles of Class 1495 from Microcomputer Support Specialist 1 to Technology Support Specialist 1, and Class 1496 from Microcomputer Support Specialist 2 to Technology Support Specialist 2, and by the prefix by the letter C, by creating the classifications of traffic sign worker, traffic technician, senior traffic technician, engineering technician, senior engineering technician, and biosolids coordinator.
Good afternoon, Council. Doug McDaniel, Human Resources. With me today is Nicole Gross, Compensation Manager as well. We have these ordinances to bring before you. Personnel Board has reviewed them as well prior to bringing them to you. We'll talk individually, and I'll let Nicole do the background work.
The Microcomputer Support Supervisor is being revised to better reflect the work being performed. This is an update in title and examples of work. And it is needed because the classifications are very outdated, as you can tell with the title of microcomputer. This classification is currently vacant, so this is a good opportunity to revise the class and adjust the pay range from an M2 to an M1. The Microcomputer Support Specialists 1 and 2, much like the supervisor, are being revised to better reflect the work being performed. Again, this is just really needed because the classifications are very outdated. And then the other one with, we have quite a few classifications that include the traffic sign worker, traffic technician, senior traffic technician, engineering technician, and the senior engineering technician. These are being created to better reflect the work being performed in public works. Right now, our current structure places multiple disciplines in few classifications. So we are creating classifications to reflect the work performed, and this will give us better matches when we do our comparability studies, and they will better align to the market. And then the last classification is a biosolids coordinator. This is being created for Public Works Wastewater Division. This classification is moving from the county to the city, and the classification is responsible for coordination of land application of biosolids.
Questions? Jane.
So, Nicole, on the Technology Support Specialist 2, the pay range was not listed.
Those are going to remain the same, Jane.
So it'll be the same as
what they currently are. So the support specialists 1 and 2 are currently a C30 and a C36.
So, but the pay range is on 17-62 listed from $52,289 to $87,551. So are you saying that's the pay range for both Technology Support Supervisor 1 and Supervisor, and 2? Or those, oh, I see what you're saying, they're different.
Those
Yes,
are
the
different,
Supervisor
Jane.
and Specialist.
Right.
I got it, sorry
Right.
about that.
And those are just updates,
Okay.
and so the pay range does not change.
Okay, and is it the same for all the other designations, the new classes that you've created, or?
Those are new.
Right, those are new classifications. We did a market study, and what we are proposing aligns with our market data.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy.
Thank you. Do any of these have any impact on the fiscal year 16-17 or 17-18?
We view these as being neutral right now.
Excuse me?
These are all neutral impact.
Thank you.
Is that neutral because you haven't hired them? Or, I mean, when you create new jobs with ranges, are you expecting no impact above the current budget?
Correct. In our process right now, as we first get these classifications approved by this body, we'll then work with the management team of Public Works to then align the existing incumbents into the current pay ranges itself.
Okay. John.
Yes, on item 17-64, where you talk about various public works, you have a traffic sign worker, a traffic technician, a senior traffic technician. What does that mean? What are those positions? What do they do?
Go ahead. Why don't you tell them what they're currently in, Nicole, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Currently, we have an associate engineering specialist, an engineering specialist, and a senior engineering specialist. And those classifications are very broad. And so what we have done is we've created several classifications to better define the work that those employees are doing. So the traffic sign worker is kind of exactly what it says. They're going to be installing the signs in the city of Lincoln. Traffic technician is working on the signals for the city, and the senior traffic technician will have some supervision and some higher level work above that traffic technician. The engineering technician and senior engineering technician, those are in the engineering services department. They'll be helping with plan designs and lab work, things like that.
Are you trying to basically say to us that the specificity,
The detail?
Yeah, that it helps you manage costs because the more broad categories might allow for broader ranges of salaries. Help us understand how this helps with managing the fiscal cost of the city.
I think that's an appropriate description.
Specificity,
Marion.
I got
Yes. These positions were all kind of put into, multiple disciplines were put into classifications that at the time there was a philosophy, but again, I think we've outstripped that with the specialization into these disciplines. We have accurate matches within the marketplace, such as traffic sign worker. That is a specific classification we find in our array cities, so we should align to that rather than something that does not have actual alignment within the marketplace at all. So it helps us become more accurate in matching to that as we go into negotiations and really reflecting the work that's being done. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on these items? All right, seeing none, Teresa?
All right, that concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session. We'll start with public hearing resolutions. Item 28, Comp Plan Conformance 17006. This is adding the City Center redevelopment project at 926 P Street, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Well, this has some clear consistency with the comp plan. As we heard during the public hearing, it'll strengthen the P Street retail corridor that's been part of the downtown master plan. It supports high-density, mixed-use structures in downtown, and it also has the added benefit of enhancing an entryway corridor into the city, so I tend to support it. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 29 is approving the interlocal cooperation agreement between the city and the Lower Platte South NRD for cooperative planning and future ownership of trails in urbanizing areas, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Cindy?
Yeah, I would just like to say that the reason I asked the questions I asked is because we do have that Murdoch Trail that is still limestone out there, and I know that the Great Plains Trails Network is working very hard to get funding for that, and so I am a little concerned if we're going to take these, take ownership of these, that we have some kind of plan in place for upgrading them and securing funding, hopefully with the help of some of the developers. So.
Okay. Further discussion? All right. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next is item 30, the conservation easement agreement with the Lower Platte South NRD, the Bruce Severs Family Trust, and Lola Severs Family Trust to preserve the natural resources on the easement area described as Lot 54 IT, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Again, this is to help preserve and protect some of our area wetlands and natural drainage ways and tree masses. It's approximately a 30-acre site, and we have the benefit of a partnership with the NRD that helps defray 50% of the cost, making it more affordable for the city to have this conservation easement. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then, public hearing ordinances second reading are items 31 through 34. Ordinances on third reading, item 35, amending Title II of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to establishing an appropriate funding level for the city's police and fire pension plans, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Fellers.
And we are open for public hearing, right?
You know, I don't believe we are, actually.
No, this is action
we-
only.
Okay, just action. Okay.
Action only, but
All right.
would you like to?
That's right. Would you like to do the amendments, motion to amend now?
I can do that. Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. The amendments are being passed around.
Okay.
There are amendments 2 and 3. There was an amendment we had prepared earlier. I don't think that's going to be offered because the changes that were in Amendment 1 are also present in Amendment 2.
Do we need to have the motions made before you discuss them, or?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
I move motion to amend number 2. The purpose is to clarify this ordinance change is not intended to impact the city's 2017-2018 budget or contribution to the pension fund. And
We
so
get
I need a second on that.
Second. Moved by Roy and seconded by Trent.
And also motion to amend number 3. It's replacing Appendix B, reference, just to allow a larger cushion before the city's contribution to the pension fund is reduced.
Both of these are relatively short.
Yes, we need a second.
Yes.
Anyone want to second that? Seconded by Carl. Moved by Roy and seconded by Carl. So we're going to discuss these together then, these two motions together, or do we want to take them separately?
I think we can do them together. They're both very brief as far as the changes that are made. So if you turn to Amendment number 2, one of the changes that was made from the original draft that came before you is when I was preparing the draft, I inadvertently left out some of the definitions for sections 265.010 and 2.66.010. So those were restored. There weren't any changes made in the definition. They just went back to what's in the current code. So the change that's made in Amendment 2 is on page 1, line 11, where it says effective August 31, 2018. That creates an effective date for this change that you're doing now to clarify what was, I think, the intent all along, certainly the intent, I think, of the Citizens Committee, which is the change would not go in effect this fiscal year, but would go in effect for the next biennium. And so that's all that change does. But you also have, if you look on line 15 of that page, it talks about the money shall be placed in the pension fund by no later than the end of the fiscal year. Prior to this change, there was no date as to when the pension contribution would be made on an annual basis. My understanding is, with talking with Paul Latomsky, the city's portion of the pension fund is put in every month. And so it's not going to change what the city's actually been doing. It just makes it clear in the code that it will be all of the contributions from the city will be done by the end of the fiscal year. So that's the change, the addition made in Amendment number 2. Amendment number 3, again, only has one change, and that is on page 2 of the Appendix B, where it talks about at what point the city can re-examine its funding formula. The original version of Appendix B said that when it got to 110% funded, then the city could re-examine how much it put in. The amendment says that will happen when it reaches 115% of being fully funded. And just a little background on that, when this discussion was going forward at what would be the appropriate place to change that funding formula, our actuarial advisor said, well, a first standard deviation, I think, is 112%, a little over 112%. So you could round down to 110%. You could round up to 115%. I think the council during this discussion decided it would prefer to round up to 115%. That I'd be willing to answer any questions.
Cindy.
Thank you. Looking at the motion amend number 2, now, as I understand it, I'm looking at page 1 where the date of August 31st, 2018 is inserted. And does that mean this has to do with fiscal 18-19 or fiscal 17-18? Because this looks like there needs to be some kind of a deposit by the end of 18. And so would that be, I guess I'm wondering if that shouldn't be 19.
Well, by the time you get to August 31st, 2018, the year is pretty much over. I mean, the 17-18 year will be over on, that the policy will not go into effect until August 31st of 2018. So it won't impact what we do in 2017-18.
Okay, so it'll be at that point in time, because it says that the effective that date, then there has to be a deposit, they have to have been fully funded the 17-18 actual aerial recommendation or not?
It said September 1st, 2018, I think would be much more appropriate.
Okay, would you entertain a friendly amendment to change that to September 1st, 2018? Thank you.
Other questions?
Friendly amendment.
Oh, no, a motion to amend number 2.
And you need a second to that?
Second.
Okay, moved by Cindy and seconded by Trent to change that to September 1st, 2018 throughout the text. Would it be appropriate to change it every time it says
Yes.
effective August 31st, 2018?
Because it will be there in 3 different places, 2.62.010, 2.65.010, and then 2.66. So on all 3 of those places, that change will be made.
Okay. I have some questions about number 3. Since the first time we've seen it, I just want to make sure I understand where it says 115. I'm looking for the 115%. Oh, there, okay, so it's on page 2?
On page 2, the 3rd line down.
Okay. And it looks like you just moved it because originally it was the last sentence of that paragraph where it referenced 110, but you incorporated it earlier in the paragraph. Is there any reason for that? Any substantive change that goes along with the placement of that text?
No, that was just a change that was made when we were redrafting it to make it more easily understandable, I believe.
Okay. And one last question, just for the record. These changes, this funding policy, if approved, any future changes to the funding policy would have to come back before this council for any, is that correct?
That's
Can you
correct.
just verify that?
By passing this, you're adopting both the changes in the code, but also Appendix B as part of the code, and so the only way they could be changed would be by this council.
Or future council, I mean,
Or future council, by the Lincoln
The
City
council.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Oh, John?
Help me see exactly where it would mandate it comes back to the council versus at the recommendation of the actuaries or whatever.
Well, the Appendix B is adopted as part of the code. The only body that's empowered to change the city code is the city council. If you look at 2.62.010, it specifically references the funding policy detailed in Appendix B.
Could you say what page that's on, Jeff?
It'll be
Or
page
where-
1 of the substitute amendment, amendment number 2.
And say that again, please.
What line?
On
12?
Yes, line 12, page 1, it talks about the annual contribution determined pursuant to the funding policy detailed in Appendix B. So any changes that are made in Appendix B need to be made by the council as part of this code. This is unusual, the pension portion, because you can go through the code, we don't have appendixes much. The exception would be the pension portion of the code. There may be others, but the 2 that come to mind, we have an Appendix A and Appendix B that are part of the code referring to the pension fund.
Okay. Any other questions on the motions to amend number 2 and number 3?
And her amendment.
And the friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Well,
And the motion to amend number 4? Is it a 4? What are we calling it?
It's an amendment to the amendment.
It's an amendment to the amendment, okay.
I'm not done with my follow-up here because I don't
You bet.
think, pardon me, I don't think Appendix B or whatever it says that, as my colleague would just point out to on page 3 at the bottom there on the funding policy review, you talk about plan administrator, and I think last week in our discussion, they said the plan administrator was the pension committee, or, I mean, or.
But that's not talking about changing the ordinance.
No, but it says, therefore, the funding policy will be reviewed and amended as necessary by the plan administrator. It doesn't say by the city council. Plan administrator is not the city council. Well, show me what who the plan administrator is, because I heard the committee, I heard the actuaries, I've seen it in the past, the administration has changed.
Right.
So who is the plan administrator? I asked that question, and I was given the answer, it's kind of the.
Paul's the plan administrator, Otomsky, right?
Well, actually, Brandon, would you? Doug.
Normally, the employer of a private plan is the plan administrator, but we're not a private employer.
If this isn't right, I mean, we're just seeing these, we can hold this over for next week. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, if we want to get it right and make the language right, we can hold it over for another week, make sure we have the amendments correct, send them out to everybody at the packets, and vote on it next week. That way we'll have all the language correct.
Okay.
And
Does
you'll
that
be
make
able to
sense?
participate in that vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Yeah.
This is your last grade.
So,
Trent is correct because, and so is John, because it refers to the pension administrator, and then at the bottom it talks about the plan administrator. So, and there's no definition of either of those entities in the list of definitions in the motion to amend number 2.
So we
certainly
could-
might be helpful to add some language defining that, and also saying that it would also have to come back before the city council, because
Yeah.
that's the intention that we clearly have all agreed exists.
So I'm going to make a motion. Let's delay action on item 30, or item 35 for 1 week.
Second.
Delay moved by Trent and seconded by Roy.
One
John-
thing,
John, would you
Mr.
like to just
Kirkpatrick, when you
add
look at
something?
this with Mr. McDaniels, you
Yes.
might look at existing code that may not be changed to see if there is some reference in there on
I'll do
plan
that.
administrator, just so we, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me.
All right, I guess we're going to be voting on a delay then, Teresa.
Okay. Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 36 is creating alley repaving District 51 from 18th Street to Antelope Valley Parkway between O and N Streets, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next is item 37, text amendment 17003, amending chapter 27.67 of the Lincoln Municipal Code related to parking, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Well, this is just going to help make our code a little more consistent in terms of the rights to park in the residential zoning districts, and will hopefully allow for, better development of additional residential in our community. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb? Motion carried 7-0. Next is item 38, a real estate sales agreement between the city and Kirk Havronik for the sale of city-owned properties located at 5122, 5132, and 5142 Betty Lou Boulevard, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Cindy?
Yes, I think this is one where we actually bought low and sold high. Glad to see that.
All right, please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 39 is the Nature's Variety Phase 1 redevelopment agreement, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Carl?
Yes, just, this is a good development happening to consolidate business that is not only involved in our community, but in other communities too, including the state of Oregon, I believe, and bringing employees here and strengthening their business in Lincoln. So it's a great thing.
Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 40 is the amending the fiscal year 16-17 CIP to authorize and appropriate $275,000 in TIF funds for the Nature's Variety Phase 1 project, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Cindy?
Yeah, I have a staff question. I think that Jeff should be able to answer it, I'm hoping, because I see that, is Brandon still here somewhere? I don't think. Okay, thank you. So my question is, when we have this involves a tax allocation bond rather than a developer purchasing a bond from their own bank. And as I'm looking through the budget, it looks to me like if we grant a TIF to a developer who's using their own lender for a TIF bond, we don't have to include them in the CIP. That we only have to include this if it's the city allocating the funds. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. I think we have to, anytime we do a TIF project, we have to amend the CIP, if that's your question, regardless of who buys the bonds.
So, okay, so when I look in the bond listings in the budget, I see tax allocation bonds very infrequently, and I don't see other TIF bonding unless it's somewhere that I'm not familiar with.
In the CIP?
Yes.
Well, that may,
I'm sorry, pardon me, not in the CIP. I'm talking about actually in bond, when we're looking at our bond obligations and we
Right.
publish that in the budget.
well, a TIF bond is not a debt that the city owes. I mean, when you think of a TIF obligation, that's more of a pass-through that the city is responsible for passing through rather than an obligation the taxpayers in the city of Lincoln are on the hook for.
So I understand that, but I'm trying to understand why tax allocation bonds are listed as an obligation in the city budget, but TIF bonds that are issued by a developer's own bank are not.
Don't have an answer for you today.
These would be tax exempt bonds.
Well, the way the bond ordinance is written up, we write them so they're either taxable or tax exempt. They are, I think, generally tax exempt, but if you look at the actual bond ordinance, it doesn't specify.
The definition in 17-60 of tax exempt bond seems to relate to that, but maybe not.
Well, I think the intent is that they'll be tax exempt. But the actual bond ordinance talks about them being either taxable or tax exempt. But I think the intent in the commitment that the city makes is to do whatever we can to make sure they're tax exempt.
John?
Would we hold the project up if we waited a week to get these answers rather than do it from the dais? I don't want to hold the people up.
You want
It's a good
Monet to run and
project.
see if Brandon's still here?
I guess the question is the answer to get change your vote, Cindy?
Well, it may.
Oh, we can see if Brandon's here.
Well, we want to run and see if Brandon's here.
So you want me to make the motion to delay? And I would make the motion to delay.
I think we're going to check and see if Brandon is still here and could answer
Okay.
the question.
Is Carl checking?
Yeah.
Is Carl checking?
Carl's
Yeah.
Okay.
Cindy, is one of your questions about whether or not the city is obligated when it comes to any of these kinds of tax allocation bonds?
I guess because I know that our bond rating has to do with our indebtedness and so forth. And it actually, as I was looking through the budget book, this is listed under miscellaneous budgets. And so the fact that we have to add something or change the CIP, thank you, is My understanding in visiting with Don Hurst was that actually there were some, that the ones that are tax allocation bonds are perhaps bonds that we're taking on as a city ourselves, even though they're being repaid by tax increment financing, that the city itself is issuing those bonds or at least taking on responsibility for those bonds.
I can't think of a time when
And
we've
some
had
diff-
TIF
There've been
come
some
before
changes
us.
too in the
Yeah.
government accounting standards too, GASB, and I don't know if this affects it or what, but got the bonds there and they're listed in the CAFR, the, annual financial report.
Well, and I can't speak to how it's listed in our budget documents, but I can tell you that the city of Lincoln has no obligation to make sure those bonds are paid, other than serving as a pass-through agency to make sure they're spent for appropriate purposes.
Good.
Thank you, Carl.
Just don't sit down.
Come on, yeah, no,
Oh,
come on right up. Yeah.
You're up.
Can you just say your name and address to identify yourself for everybody?
I'm Brandon Kaufman, Finance Director for the city.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Brandon.
Nice.
So, okay, I was asking questions about the TIF and the tax allocation bonding.
Okay.
Because as I looked through our budget, and I'm looking at the miscellaneous budget portion, and we list their tax allocation bonds, but we don't necessarily list TIF bonding that where a developer actually gets the bonding from their own lender. And so I'm wanting, and so I'm looking at the tax allocation bonds from the last, from our last budget, and it looks like that becomes part of our balance sheet, but the other ones do not. And so I'm trying to understand that, because I'm looking at tax allocation bonds that are issued from 2005 through 2013 is the last one that's listed on here. And it talks about how long we service them and when they will be completely serviced.
Okay. Councilmember Lamb, for the small TIF bonds, we budget for those. So since we're actually taking on some risk for those payments, we budget for those for that internal transfer. But for the developer purchase, we're functionally acting as if they're like an in and an out. So we don't budget for the large purchase TIFs because the developers are functionally financing, and then we're just receiving the payments from the county and then making the payments out to the developer.
So on this one where it's a tax allocation bond that we're being asked to approve, then that's one that the city will be issuing, that we have budgeted for?
Councilwoman, it's my belief.
Want to identify yourself, please? Just for
Mike
everyone.
Lang in the Mayor's Department. This will be a developer purchase bond, and that has been confirmed with the Nature's Variety attorney, Tom Houston. There was never any intent that this would be a small TIF backed by the city. So this will be of the developer purchase model, which is consistent with our business practices.
So whether it will be purchased from the city by the developer?
Like Brandon had mentioned, the city is a conduit. And typically in this case, when we issue the bonds, either they're purchased by the developer or the developer's lender.
So we're being told there's no risk on the part of the city, is that right?
That's what I understand, that's true.
Okay. And so I guess that's what threw me, is we had to add it to the CIP. And so we haven't budgeted for this, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so this would be actually something we would have to get funds from somewhere else. Will it be listed on our tax allocation bond page in our upcoming budget, 1820?
Only the small TIF, or the ones that are purchased or financed by the city are listed within the budget, but the developer purchase ones are not.
We have a limit on how large those can be, the small TIF?
The small TIF, we dedicate a certain mill levy. I don't remember exactly what that number is. It's almost, my impression is it's not to exceed, but I don't know the details. It's been some time since I've inquired about that, mainly because, we are in the developer purchased or developer lender purchase mode.
Okay.
I haven't inquired about that for some time.
Okay, and I guess that was my question, is if there's a maximum amount that we actually can say is small TIF. if there's a cap at if we can call it a small TIF.
I believe there was a cap on a total amount, relative to the mill levy, but I don't think that's been used for quite some time.
Okay.
And we can look into that and follow
Thank you.
up.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you both for coming down and clarify that for us. Right, if there's no further discussion on that, are we ready to vote? Please call the roll, Teresa.
All right, Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Sorry. Item 41, authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds for the Nature's Variety Phase 1 project, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Roy, discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Resolutions on first reading are items 42 and 43. Ordinances first reading are items 44 and 45. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone session.
I'm Jane Swoboda. I invite you to A Paradise on Earth. There are some corrections. My second day back from Europe, my sister Amy Swoboda drove me from the train station in Washington, D.C. on December 3rd, 1983. Amy stated, Ann Gorsuch, head of the Environmental Protection Agency, is trapped in her home. She deserves it because she didn't act on cancer area hotspots in America. Ann Gorsuch was trapped in her Georgetown apartment on Friday evening. The Water Street EPA building closes between Friday at 5 p.m. to Monday at 7 a.m. How did Amy know this? 4 bicycles were next to her front door. Why are these bikes here? I stated. Amy stated, these bikes belong to 4 men. They forgot to take them with them after we partied. The police didn't come to Ann Gorsuch's house until Monday. 2 feds passed away of hazardous waste in the apartment, and Ann was assassinated with a washcloth of hazardous waste. Amy Swoboda was a hazardous waste lawyer from 1980 to 1990. United States Senator Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota was one of 3 housemates that had the cocaine with 4 men after they did the assassination. It wasn't in the Washington Post until Tuesday morning. There was no change in the announcement that Ann Gorsuch was presumed trapped in her apartment for 3 months. Do you think Ann Gorsuch starved from being trapped in her apartment for 3 months? No. Amy is a suspect in the assassination of Ann Gorsuch, head of the federal agency. Amy Swoboda does not deny she's a communist. Communists have tried to take over governments with assassinations. Communism is illegal. Her communist sister, Teresa Swoboda, pushed her son out of a 3rd-story door March 15, 1982, because Little Dang didn't cooperate with liking the homicidal activities and a father that tumbled buildings, George Breidenbach, a Soviet. Teresa's not been taken in by FBI that I know of. Did you read her book? It's called Treason. Neither sister denied these acts in court. They were in court last week.
Would anyone else like to come forward?
Madam Chair, I'll defer to my colleague, Mr.
Yeah,
Feller.
can I do this?
Please.
All right, I move for adjournment.
Second. Moved by, I almost said Troy. Moved by Trent and
That's
second by
right.
Roy. Okay, we are adjourned. Okay, we need a vote. Please
Troy
call the roll.
Sellers.
Please call the roll.
Raybold? Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned.